They say kindness makes the world go round, but let's be honest, sometimes it just makes people weirdly hate you. Ever noticed that? You hold the door open and they glare. You offer help and they assume you have an agenda. You forgive and somehow you become the problem. The truth? The softer you show up, the harder some people try to break you. And no, it's not because you did something wrong. It's because your kindness reveals everything they're not. It rattles their insecurities, challenges their bitterness, and disrupts the control they thought they had over you. In this video, we're pulling off the polite mask and diving into 7 brutally honest reasons why being kind can turn you into a silent target. If you've ever felt punished for being good, this one's for you. So, before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment that says, "Kind, not stupid." If you're ready to own your strength without apologizing for your heart, let's talk about the dark side of kindness. Ready? Let's begin. 1. Kindness triggers insecurity. I used to think kindness was always the answer, that if you treated people with respect, showed patience, listened with empathy, they would meet you with the same. But over the years, I've learned that kindness doesn't always bring out the best in others. Sometimes it brings out the worst. And it's not because your kindness is wrong. It's because it reveals something they've spent a lifetime trying to hide. Let me tell you about a man named George. He was in his late 60s when I met him, retired, calm, the kind of man who always showed up early, shook your hand with both of his, and never spoke a harsh word about anyone. He had this quiet warmth about him, the kind of presence that made others feel safe. But oddly enough, in his volunteer group, George became the target of subtle hostility. The younger coordinator would cut him off mid-sentence. Another man, insecure and loud, would regularly joke about how old-fashioned George's views were. A few others ignored him entirely, not because he had done anything wrong, but because his presence, his patience, his lack of ego, his steady grace made them uncomfortable. He didn't play power games. He didn't seek approval. And in that silence, they saw themselves too clearly. That's the paradox of kindness. It's supposed to build bridges, but in insecure minds, it shines a light on everything they lack: emotional discipline, self-control, humility. George's calmness didn't make him weak. It made others feel exposed. And instead of confronting the discomfort, they projected it back onto him. They needed him to be small, because his presence reminded them they hadn't grown up yet, at least not on the inside. Psychologically, this reaction is rooted in what Carl Jung called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject. When someone like George shows up, living proof that dignity and peace are possible, it challenges everything these men built their identities on. Their defensiveness wasn't about him. It was a war against their own inadequacies. So, what's the Stoic solution here? Don't change your nature to make others comfortable. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's your job. Be the calm presence. Be the mirror. If your kindness reveals someone else's bitterness, let it. That's their burden, not yours. Don't carry what they refuse to face. Stand firm, remain kind, and protect your peace. Because, in the end, your stillness is strength, and not everyone can handle that, too. They assume you're weak. Did you know that in most primate species, the loudest male isn't the leader, but the most anxious one? The one pounding his chest, snarling, making a scene. He's rarely in control. The true alpha? He's composed, observant, reserved. That quiet strength unsettles people, especially in today's culture where dominance is confused with volume and noise is mistaken for authority. And here's where the danger lies. when you choose restraint over retaliation, when you carry yourself with quiet dignity, the insecure don't see strength. They see a target. They assume you're weak, not because you've done anything wrong, but because you're not playing their game. You don't interrupt. You don't shout. You don't flex your ego for attention. And that terrifies people who've built their entire identity around dominance. They can't read you. You don't feed their need for reaction. You stand there, calm, clear-eyed, and that silence speaks louder than their performance. And instead of respecting it, they often try to provoke it. Because if they can get a rise out of you, if they can make you bark back, it confirms their illusion that you're just like them, fragile, reactive, insecure. This happens more often than we admit, especially for men in their later years. When you've lived long enough, you've likely found that you don't need to prove anything anymore. That's wisdom earned, not gifted. But to younger or more reactive men, your calm becomes a challenge to their inflated sense of power. You're not showing teeth, and to them, that looks like weakness. But as any seasoned man knows, when the dog doesn't bark, it's because he doesn't need to. He knows what he's capable of. That's where Stoicism offers a different kind of power, not the kind that blusters in the room and demands attention, but the kind that governs itself first. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury, to be unaffected, to stay in control." In this framework, power isn't what you force onto others, it's what you refuse to let others take from you. So, if your calmness is mistaken for passivity, let it be. If your refusal to play petty games makes people uncomfortable, that's their discomfort to carry. True strength is invisible to those who only understand control through fear. But to those who've walked the longer road, who've outlived their need to be loud, you already know. Quiet is the language of the strong. Don't trade it for noise. 3. Kindness disrupts control games. There's something quietly terrifying to manipulators about a person they can't emotionally destabilize. You see, manipulators thrive on chaos. They plant seeds of doubt, twist meaning, test your loyalty, then watch how you respond. Their power comes not from strength, but from control over how you feel, how you explain yourself, how much guilt you're willing to carry to keep the peace. But when you meet them with unwavering kindness, not the performative, people-pleasing kind, but a grounded, calm, and self-contained kindness, they lose their grip. They can't steer you because you're not trying to win their approval. They can't bait you because you don't react the way they expect. To a manipulator, that's a threat. They don't know how to dominate someone who doesn't flinch. And that's what makes truly kind men dangerous, not because they're aggressive, but because they don't engage in the emotional warfare others rely on. They won't shame you. They won't belittle you. They won't escalate to prove their worth. And that makes the manipulator feel powerless. It's psychological quicksand for someone who survives on pushing buttons that no longer work. This becomes even more unsettling when a man grows older and stops apologizing for his silence. In a youth-driven culture obsessed with noise, older men who no longer feel the need to explain themselves become unreadable to those who still rely on emotional reactions to measure status. The older man listens, nods, says little, and in that quiet, the manipulator panics because every trick that worked before guilt, flattery, passive aggression meets a wall of immovable presence. You've seen enough life to spot the game early, and you no longer participate. And this is where Stoicism becomes not just a philosophy, but a defense mechanism. The Stoic doesn't chase control, he masters himself. His decisions are rooted in principle, not emotion. His boundaries don't shift just to keep others happy. That's what makes him untouchable in the eyes of manipulators. He's not cold. He's just not available for emotional exploitation. His kindness is deliberate, not reactive. It's something he gives, not something others can extract. If you've ever been the target of subtle control tactics, silent treatment, triangulation, constant guilt trips, and you met them with a level gaze and unshaken kindness, you've already seen this dynamic play out. You weren't playing hard to get. You just weren't playing at all. And in a world obsessed with control, that's the most disarming power there is. Stay grounded. Stay kind. Stay unreadable. Let them lose sleep trying to figure out a game you never agreed to play. For they feel entitled to more. It always starts small. A favor here, a bit of time there. You offer help, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because it feels right. You lend your tools, your advice, your presence, no strings attached. But slowly, something shifts. The gratitude fades. The asking increases. And one day, when you hesitate or say no, their face changes. You've gone from generous to selfish in the span of a breath. That's the danger of kindness. It creates expectations. Let me tell you about Thomas, a retired Navy engineer I met through a local veteran support group. Solid man, the kind who'd give you the shirt off his back and probably fix your car while he was at it. For years, he helped out a younger neighbor, Jason, who'd just become a single father. At first, it was practical things, picking up groceries, watching the kid during work shifts, helping repair a busted sink. Jason was always thankful, respectful, until he wasn't. It wasn't one moment, it was a series of subtle shifts. Jason stopped asking. He started assuming. Thomas's weekends were no longer his. He became, in Jason's eyes, an on-call resource. And when Thomas finally said no, just once, when he was sick and exhausted, the reaction wasn't disappointment, it was anger, accusation, as if Thomas had broken something. That's what entitlement does. It rewrites kindness into obligation. The giver becomes invisible. The gift becomes owed. Psychologically, it's a common phenomenon called dependency creep. People unconsciously adjust to what they receive. And if they haven't built self-reliance, your kindness becomes their scaffolding. When you remove it, even gently, it feels to them like collapse. They feel betrayed, not because you harmed them, but because they never learned to stand on their own. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. You are not responsible for someone else's expectations. Marcus Aurelius said, "Receive without pride, let go without attachment." The Stoic gives freely, but never forgets to remain free himself. That means giving with open hands, not open contracts. And when the moment comes to pull back to protect your time, your energy, your well-being, you do so with clarity, not guilt. Thomas didn't stop being kind. He just stopped being used. And in doing so, he rediscovered something crucial. When you draw boundaries, you reveal who respected your kindness and who merely depended on it. Be generous. Be helpful. But never forget, you are not a service. You are a sovereign. Kindness doesn't mean endless access. It means choosing when and to whom you give. And once you do, let go of how they receive it. That's not your weight to carry. 5. You don't break when they push. There's a certain kind of person who thrives on control, not through strength, but through reaction. They push, prod, provoke, just to see if they can move you, just to watch your face change. It's not about what you've done. It's about what they need. Proof that they can still affect someone, that they matter, that they have influence. But when you remain composed, when you respond with calm instead of outrage, it doesn't satisfy them, it enrages them. Because in that moment, they realize something they can't admit. They don't have power over you. And that's when your kindness becomes dangerous. because it's not weakness dressed up in politeness. It's strength cloaked in principle. This is a side of kindness most people don't talk about, the part where you're being baited, insulted, misread, and you choose not to react, not because you're passive, but because you've already won the battle inside, the battle of ego, of needing to defend yourself, of needing to set the record straight. And that quiet refusal to be pulled into someone else's emotional storm, that's what makes you unbreakable. Insecure people hate that because their whole strategy depends on your volatility, on your emotional compliance. If they can make you flinch, they feel strong. If they can get you to snap, they feel justified. But if you just look at them, not with arrogance, but with unmoved clarity, what they see is a mirror. They weren't ready for one that reflects their own lack of control. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about rising above reactivity. Stoicism teaches that true power lies not in what you control outside of you, but what you control within you. That's why men who've weathered storms, divorces, deaths, betrayals, failure walk into conflict with a different air. Not because they enjoy it, but because they've already made peace with the worst-case scenario. And when you've done that, no one can manipulate you with lesser threats. So, the next time someone tries to poke at your stillness, remember, your refusal to break is what breaks them, not through aggression, but through contrast. They scream, you're silent. They posture, you stay seated. They push, and you don't budge. That isn't weakness. That's the kind of quiet power most men spend a lifetime trying to earn. Kindness without boundaries is fragility, but kindness with backbone, that's something else entirely. That's force, restrained by wisdom. And it doesn't need to prove itself. 6. They hate that you're not bitter disparity. Here's an interesting fact. According to clinical psychology, people who hold on to resentment often view forgiveness not as a strength, but as a weakness. Why? Because in their world, bitterness is armor. It's how they protect their ego from vulnerability. So, when they see someone who's gone through hardship and didn't turn cold, it messes with their entire worldview. You've met people like this. They collect slights, hoard past betrayals like trophies, and build their identity around who wronged them. To them, bitterness equals strength. Cynicism equals wisdom. So, when you show up kind, unguarded, still open despite everything, you become offensive to their pain. You're proof that there was another way, that healing was possible, that being wounded doesn't have to turn into a lifestyle. And they hate that. Not openly, of course. It'll come out sideways, subtle mockery, dismissive comments like, "You're too nice," or "You're still naive." They'll paint your empathy as ignorance, your kindness as foolishness. But what they're really saying is, "I don't understand how you survived without becoming like me." See, Stoicism doesn't ask you to forget pain. It doesn't even ask you to forgive. It asks you to transform what hurt you into wisdom, not a permanent defense system. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who caused the injury," he wasn't being poetic. He was offering a blueprint for real resilience, not the kind that hardens, but the kind that deepens. If you've lived long enough, you know pain comes in many forms, but how you carry it defines you. Do you let it rot into resentment, or do you let it refine your character? People who chose the former can't stand those who chose the latter, not because you harmed them, but because your presence exposes the part of themselves they've given up on. And that's why your kindness draws hate. It's not because you're weak, it's because you're proof that strength doesn't have to look like bitterness. You're living evidence that peace after pain is possible. And that truth makes some people very uncomfortable. Let them be. That discomfort isn't yours to manage. Stay soft where others hardened. Stay kind where others collapsed. Your grace is not a flaw, it's their mirror. 7. The radical power of kindness. Let's be real, kindness should make life easier. But sometimes it feels like it paints a target on your back. You're calm, they call you fake. You're generous, they get greedy. You don't explode when pushed, and suddenly, you're the weirdo. The truth is, being kind in a world addicted to conflict is a radical act. It unsettles the insecure, exposes the manipulative, and terrifies those still hiding behind bitterness, like it's a badge of honor. But here's what they don't get. Your kindness isn't weakness. It's strategy. It's power sharpened by restraint. It's strength wrapped in stillness. And yes, it makes people uncomfortable. Let it that discomfort isn't your burden to carry. So, if you've ever been hated for simply being good, you're not broken. You're just not play acting in someone else's dysfunctional drama. And that makes you dangerous in the best way. If this video gave voice to something you felt, but never said out loud, do me a favor. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment below. My kindness is my power. Because around here, we don't apologize for being decent. We train to stay kind and unshakable.